Welcome to neurodiverse Jeneration, the podcast where we flip the script on what it means to thrive through neurodiversity. I'm your host, Jenna Evelyn, and today we're diving headfirst into the quirks, creativity, and challenges of the neurodiverse experience. Whether you're here to laugh, learn, or find a little inspiration, you've found your people. Please note that this program may not be suitable for younger viewers due to explicit language and mature themes. Parental guidance is advised. This show is aired for educational purposes. We are not licensed diagnosticians or counselors. Let's get the conversation rolling. Dr. Arthie Moore-Robberts, a seasoned entrepreneur and founder of Celebrating Humanity International Pty Limited and KI Leadership International Pty Limited, with a 26-year legacy of national and international impact, is my guest for today. Renowned as an international professional speaker, leadership coach, and diversity and inclusion specialist, her influence transcends government, boards of directors, universities, schools, orphanages, and empowerment programs for youth and women. Her vision and values-based leadership programs spanning South Africa, Lebanon, Ireland, UK, the USA, Bangladesh, and Pakistan drive sustainable, positive change. As a dedicated philanthropist, she champions a global movement of compassionate leaders of influence, sharing her value of compassion to catalyze transformation. She is also the creator of groundbreaking programs addressing diversity, well-being, gender-based violence, workplace bullying, and youth leadership for corporates. Why you have so much value to bring to this field. So you've had a 26-year career influencing leadership across industries, countries, continents, call it what you will. What has sparked your passion for leadership? And how has your vision evolved over time?
Oh, well, that's an awesome question. And I think I fell into leadership.
It's like others choose it for you, I think. You're almost
Yes.
elected socially as a leader.
I think also if you look at it from a different perspective, you're in a position where you see injustice. And I'm an extremely rebellious person. I fell into it for my need to adjust injustices that I saw in environments that I was stepping into. So from the age of 18, I've never worked for a person in my life, never had a salary. So I've been an entrepreneur. And one of the things I knew for a fact is I will not allow myself to be led by the stupidity of others.
Yes.
And so when you look at
for yourself, right?
But follow like a sheep, right? And if you're following a leader, they need to be taking you somewhere. And I noticed that a lot of leaders were just entitled. So they had a title and they were entitled to the pressures of leadership, but not the responsibility of it. And so when I got into leadership, it was me seeing a need for people at board level to realign their thinking. In order to do that, I had to adjust my own thinking, upgrade and evolve my belief system, look at my own prejudices, look at what my unconscious biases were, and actually evolve through it through reflection, and then putting in skills and tools, be able to then share that ability with other people. So I made it more a softer approach. I know a skill that you would really enjoy when really I want to say, you've got shit for brains.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, for
and
sure.
You can't really say that, right? Or, whatever's falling out your mouth is really dumb and I wish you would take it back. But you got to come from a different perspective of enticing somebody to want to see a different way. So then for me, leadership is not going to be a title. It's a way of being and influence.
Yes,
if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah, it's an inspiration. And I love the emphasis that you put on reflection and introspection and having to be raw and real with yourself about, okay, this is the way my brain works at the end of the day. This is these are my belief systems that are currently in place. And this is why I think the way that I do. And be like with that capacity to almost trace the thought backwards, you're effectively using cognitive behavioral therapy on yourself. How
Exactly.
cool. I love that.
Well, I
I
mean,
love
aren't
that.
we as leaders supposed to look at ourselves first before we vomit our thoughts on other people, right?
Oh, thank you. Oh, buzz.
Right?
Buzz, babes.
Have you heard of the sentence? I mean, it's something that I came up with a long time ago, and that is just to give people a different way of thinking. It's a term that I coined called projectile dysfunction.
Wow, that's
Right?
powerful.
So
That's
if
powerful.
you don't know yourself, you're projecting your insecurities, your lack of understanding and your belief system on other people without taking the time to understand their needs, wants, desires, and where they come from. Isn't
Wow.
that going to talk into our neurodiversity then?
Oh my
We
gosh,
project
hugely.
our lack of awareness of where
Oh,
people are coming from, what the thoughts are, behaviors, and the intentionality behind being more inclusive.
oh, say
So
it
when we
louder for the people at the
project,
back.
right, we suffer from projectile dysfunction
But
when we
it's so,
don't
so
know.
true. It's that the importance
Yes,
of that element of sensitivity, right?
yes, exactly,
I love that. But you
exactly.
brought that in so gorgeously in your it was compassionate leadership.
Mm.
I was looking at all your stuff this morning. I was like, "Ooh, let's do some research." As a diversity and inclusion specialist, what challenges do neurotypical leaders face as with neurodivergent employees? And how can organizations better support them?
Well, that's another beautiful question because, working with corporate companies and people globally, the one thing that I've realized that challenge managers is their thinking skills first, right? So when I'm talking about their thinking, I'm talking about the lack of awareness of what's out there, what they should
Yes.
be growing in their knowledge base, in their understanding, in their
It's almost
ability
like
to
they're
lead.
in a bubble, hey?
They think that they've got to manage people and human behavior, and that's where the challenge starts.
Mm,
When we start first with the difference between managing and leading, managing should have been about managing processes, systems, and procedures in a company, and then
absolutely.
manage a team to be able to engage with those processes and to work towards a common vision or goal or whatever the KPIs are and things like that.
Yes.
What managers have started to do is work with human behavioral issues that they are not even skilled to handle. So I think first challenge for managers dealing with with a neurodivergent workplace would be that they don't understand what they don't understand. That's the first thing. The
Yes.
second one would be lack of diagnosis. Because how can you connect with somebody when you don't even know what their reality is,
That's
right?
very true.
That's like dating.
Mm.
You at the
Yeah.
facade, you fall in love with the facade and say, well, they've got all the attributes I want. And then
Yes.
as you start to connect to the person, more stuff comes out as they feel safe to share. And then you
Yes.
start to realize, whoa, this could be a fit, or this was not the type of person I was looking for. But
But
then you never ever ask.
I love that you've used that comparison. Um, like it's
Right?
literally like a relationship because I know
Yes.
so many entrepreneurs, so many business owners, so many people in these leadership positions who have gone into like hiring someone, right? So they, okay, I need an assistant, I need a this, I need a that, I need a whatever. And they sit down in the interview and they're like, wow, this person's CV is amazing and they're great and
Exactly.
we're going to gel so well. And then when it actually comes down to it, this person's initiative is like at a -4 or and it's a
Yes.
critical piece of information that you're missing without that context.
It is. And if you're looking at the recruitment process as your third area that is
Mm,
challenging management, right? If they don't understand, then they do not work hand in hand with the HR department through the recruitment process to become more inclusive. And so then
mm,
that has got an element of discrimination in it.
yes.
And with the discrimination means that you're bypassing somebody who actually discloses. And you
Yes,
say,
it's
I don't
almost
want the responsibility.
it's almost willful
Because
ignorance, hey?
Yes. And then when you look at the discrimination that comes in, a lot of companies don't want to invest in the reasonable accommodations that comes with neurodiverse challenges, expectations, and needs to create a safe environment. So if I want to, I'm just going to bring anybody into the environment that may not have the skills, the ability, or the brain ability
Oh
that
my gosh.
neurodivergent people have. So I'm limiting myself as a team, as a company, as
Yeah.
a visionary leader then,
Mm.
because I'm short-sighted in
Oh
bringing
my
in
gosh.
incredible knowledge and experience just because I'm too lazy to create extra processes. But then
We
think
need
about the
to get
stupidity
you
of this,
in
right?
to deal with the entire South African
Yes.
parliament.
Yeah. But if you look at stupidity of it all,
Mm.
they would invest how much money for team building and
Yes.
for training, right? Communication training, team building. People don't trust each other. Let's throw training at them. And the leadership
Yes.
don't like each other. Let's have a leadership retreat. Now, I have two
Yes.
training companies, so I understand where it's
Wow.
coming from, and there's always a
Yes.
disconnect. So my
Yes.
thinking is, why go and invest in training when there's a disconnect to go and uh, resolve symptoms? Why not, from the
Yes.
beginning, invest in the issues before they become challenges? And it's not an issue. It is saying that prevention is better than cure, right? So let
Yes,
me
it's
invest in
preemptive.
creating, yeah. So let me create an environment that is safe and welcoming, that I have all the reasonable accommodations for people, regardless of where they come from in their neurodiversity needs. But then
And
how
I
will I do
think,
that if I don't study it, interact with it and research it
yes.
for myself?
Yes, but I think that's incredibly important, particularly when it comes to the legal implications of having someone like there are so many neurodivergents out there who are undiagnosed. And
Yes.
as a boss, like as a manager, as a leader, someone in this leadership position in the company, how do you legally approach your employee and go, I think you should get tested?
See, now that's a very different conversation. And the
Mm,
reason I say that is because disclosure is legally not required in this country.
yes,
It is voluntary.
yes.
So when I look at it from that perspective, then there now becomes a gray area.
Uh-huh.
If a person coming into the work environment during the recruitment process did not
Mm,
disclose willingly that there are challenges, and I've
yeah.
been working with this for the last 3 years with a multinational company.
Uh,
And one of the areas that I found was in the recruitment process, and that HR were not aware. And what happened was that
mm,
HR got called in by manager and said to them, I want this person tested for alcohol abuse, because
mm.
their eyes are red, they're not concentrating, they're
They're
all over the
showing your
place,
signs of
they're showing
impairment. Yeah.
symptoms, right?
Mm,
But they thought it's going to be drug or alcohol abuse. That's going to be your obvious thing in the work environment, because that is the traditional old school thinking. You must be behaving this way because that's the only two stimulus that could cause it. That is
absolutely.
old school thinking.
Oh,
Now, what
that's so
I did,
powerful.
right? And so when I was called in to work with this, my first question was, have you asked the person if they are on any medication, if they need any assistance and any support outside of the work environment, or ask them meaningful, compassionate, have compassionate
Come from
conversations?
a place of compassion. Absolutely.
Yes, to understand rather than make them feel like I'm being interrogated.
Mm.
Why not just ask what's going on and shut up
Yes.
long enough to listen,
Oh, yes. Oh my
right?
gosh. That's a soundbite. That's a soundbite right there.
If you think about it from that perspective,
Yes.
what these guys did, and HR had the shocked look on their face, and I'm like, you can't be that daft. You
Yeah,
are the
come
one
now.
that recruited. Did you not ask these questions to start with, right? I said, make it part of your standard recruitment process. Are
Hmm.
there other areas that we need to be made aware of? Because this is a safe environment where we
Yes.
are willing to bring in reasonable accommodations based on these areas. And it could be abilities, disabilities, it could be different forms of mental health, it could be your neurodivergence. And if
Mm.
you could explain that in the recruitment process, then people feel comfortable to say, well, if we're going down that route of conversation, then
Yes.
this is what I am on. There is now full disclosure.
Yes.
Now managers are in a position to connect and lead better. You see, I was talking about
100%.
earlier, management is supposed to be managing processes that end up managing human behavior. Leadership is about understanding every individual's needs and then giving them the guidance and support specific to their wants and needs. That's
That's
leadership.
very true. That is very, very true. And I also appreciate that you recognize the importance, the onus lies on the manager, on the company, on the employer in that situation, in that context, particularly when you're hiring new people, to open up those fields of discussion, because the employee coming into it is not going to come and say, oh, it's appropriate in a job interview to mention that I'm bipolar. It's not going to happen, you know?
No. Now, can you imagine if you've got HR managers or managers running doing the interview, and they've had a personal experience of somebody who was bipolar that did not take the medication,
Oh
and
my
it was not
gosh.
a good experience. And so what they will do is they'll
Mm.
bring their unconscious bias into that room in that moment, not realizing that
Absolutely.
not all people are the same.
100%. And it leads to this overgeneralization, I think. Hey. And a lot of the time that's how you get your stereotypes of these are the trouble employees. These are the, you know what I mean? Oh
I
wow,
mean,
that's
with
very,
that
very powerful.
employee, they did ask her, and then she finally disclosed
Mm-hmm.
that she actually was neurodivergent and that
Okay.
she'd run out of medication.
Oh.
That is why she was in that position, had not slept, and
Oh
then she
no.
has side effects that are really intense. And one
Yeah.
of the things that happened was when she came to the meeting, I mean, she was bloodshot, she was overstimulated, she was stressed,
Mm.
and she did not know how to calm herself down without
Yeah. How
medication,
to regulate, right?
how to regulate. And what was wonderful is that this company took full responsibility and asked, why didn't you have your medication? And she says, well,
Mm.
if you look at the cost of transportation has increased in all of these areas,
I can no
what
longer
I
afford
earn
it.
doesn't allow me to pay for the medication that I need. And so
Oh,
they
that's a
offered,
whole separate issue, though. Oh, we're going to chat about that. Ah,
and they offered to pay for it and to
wow.
subsidize. There's a difference. Now,
Wow.
when you're coming from a company that's offering reasonable accommodation, what aspects is is reasonable,
Yes,
not
that's a
expected?
very blurry line.
Yes, massive.
You've worked with everyone from your corporate boards to like orphanages to I love it. I often wonder how neurodivergence in different cultural, social, and economic environments cope with their neurodiversity. Because it's not like, with medication, like you were saying, with medication costing, like
Mhm.
my meds alone cost over $1,000 every single month.
Yes.
What do households that are earning $3,000 a month do with like 5 kids to support? What do um a lot of our South Africans living in rural areas who don't have access to pharmacies, at least not don't have access, shall I rather say it's
Mhm.
quite difficult to get there,
Yes.
and who live in a different social context where mental health, because I think we can agree in different cultures, mental health seems to be more of a prominent discussion than in others, right?
Mm. Yes, absolutely.
How do you tailor your approach to this to meet these diversely different needs of different groups?
Well, that's an interesting question, because when we talk about diversity, a lot of times in our country, we've dumbed it down to black, white, Indian, colored. We boxed ourselves into 4 color schemes.
Or other.
Yes, now it's all other, right? But we got stuck on the word diversity, meaning those 4 boxes. We did not look at diversity, meaning culture, religion, background, sexual orientation, abilities, skills, disabilities.
That is so true.
Mental health.
And it's a myriad of capability that we were missing out on there, because it's oh, I lost my train of thought. You were saying.
Yeah. So when we look at diversity, I look at all the way through to the brain ability. I look at your personality, your learning style, your 7 learning intelligences. I look at the new musical intelligences. So we're looking at the brain has got the capacity to build, rebuild, and recreate very, very easily. But what we do is we dumb down diversity to its simplicity when it's a really complex, beautiful conversation to have. And then when you look at in aspects of what you asked just now, you're talking about from rural areas all the way through. Now, in rural areas and community-based culture, when would they have had access to education that neurodiversity exists? When in the first world countries with access to technology, it is readily available if you know what words to look for. Now, if I had to look for bipolar because somebody said to me, you're acting like somebody with bipolar. And then I take it as an insult, but I don't know why I'm insulted. It just sounded like an insult. I go and research what is bipolar. And then suddenly all of those different nuances come through. Did you know? And then you get to click on so many different things, and there's loads of information, but very few people take the time to research. In rural areas, they don't even know about bipolar, about dyspraxia. They don't even know ADHD exists. They just think this child is hyperactive, beat them, and make them sit still. Community-based culture, right? So you need to behave. Look at Western culture. Children should have been seen, not heard, which means that when you're in an environment, what does culture teach us? That when you are in a restaurant, do not make a noise, have beautiful mannerisms and etiquette, which means I must sit still, not move, try not to breathe too loudly because it might offend the other people sitting there. And try to eat in an orderly fashion, not all over the place. Now, when you look at all of these rules are the things that pushes people into boxes and prevents them from actually expressing the reality of who they are. So across the board, middle income all the way through to rich, it does not matter what the income is in any situation. What you're looking at is the lack of understanding, the lack of respect. My child doesn't want to get up at a certain time. Yeah, but when we were growing up, we were told, you have to get up at a certain time, you must, and this is the way to do things. I'm like,
back in my day, we trekked through hurricanes, snowstorms.
I actually tell people, put that back to your days then. Put that back to your olden days, right? You cannot vomit that shit on people right now when you don't even realize their reality. When we're talking about adapting, how many people in the rural areas are going to make their children adapt to, yes, you can sleep in? They're going to be like, no, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, we all get up. That's how we do it.
Go fetch my shampoo.
In our community-based culture, we would be like, oh, shame. You know, the shame. They're not well. But then there's only so much you can say they're not well for. Until and they'll say to you, I'm not managing, I can't concentrate. Why aren't you looking at me when I'm talking? Why are you so distracted? Why are you all over the place? And then you think the child is being disobedient rather than there's a diagnosis that needs to happen.
Oh, that is such a vital disconnect, I think, that we're missing out on, hey?
The diagnosis. A lot of people miss that because they don't want to know.
But
so
I
as
think
long as
also,
I ignore it, I'm okay.
Yes, completely. It's almost like It's like, I know a lot of people, for example, who are neurodiverse, who don't want to get tested. And this could be for a variety of different reasons. And it's ultimately up to you. It's each one to their own, whatever your journey is and whatever. Some people don't need the diagnosis in order to work through it and process it spiritually or however works best for them. But recognizing that difference in others' realities, like you were saying, the fact that other people, and we live in our own bubbles so much that we can recognize often when, oh, this person is so in their own world, like, welcome to the real world. No one really lives like that. But meanwhile, we do the same freaking thing. We are exactly the same. And it's humbling, I think, to realize that, you know?
Exactly. And this is why I always say working in a diverse environment in this way, you know, with people from different cultures, backgrounds, and abilities, you cannot stereotype people and box them.
Oh,
At
gosh.
all.
I don't think it's possible to actually stereotype anyone anymore. We're such
No.
an interesting mixture of cultures, and I think honestly, partially why we've dumbed down this concept of diversity for ourselves is because there was so much emphasis put on apartheid and what happened to our country there.
Yes.
And we've missed out on this incredible, with so many different fields that we can capitalize on as one of the most diverse countries, you know, in the world.
Yes.
Subtle brag. But also, when you were talking about that experience that lady had at her work when she wasn't able to buy her medication and she'd gone off her meds. Just to emphasize for everyone listening, that's not like I have a cold and I can't afford flu medication. If I don't take my medication, I start to shake visibly like this. I get muscle spasms. I start to sweat. I completely emotionally dysregulate, so I can go full bipolar as far as the emotional dysregulation goes then. I cannot focus. I can't sleep. I can't even control my thought processes to see them all the way through. And that is incredibly debilitating when someone is trying to sit in like a huge, like, you know, the fluorescent lighting in a box office, in the pencil skirt and heels and working at a laptop. And it's like you say, particularly in Western culture, there are all these subtle little, this is how you're expected to behave, these norms, right? And I think neurodivergence end up relying so much on our understanding of that to mask and to create this social script that's a little bit more acceptable. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this conversation. I'm getting so carried away here.
But isn't it true? Isn't it rules that's preventing neurodivergent people from adapting in an environment that will cater for them? With the overstimulation, with even the dressing. You need to be dressing comfortably, and you cannot have these uniforms and these colors that are overstimulating as well.
Yeah.
And then your lighting, and then the noise factor, and all of that. You've got to take all of that into consideration.
100%.
Adjusting.
Oh, hugely. A branch of the mental health movement has somewhat evolved further than accessibility into protest over whether or not employees should be held responsible. Employers, not employees, apologies. Employers should be held responsible for medical expenses incurred by their employees as they pertain to the maintenance of their respective mental health, including therapy appointments from a physician of their choice and medication, particularly in cases where an employee is referred by the company to a psychiatrist. Do you believe that employers hold a responsibility towards their employees' mental health care? And do you think that this could potentially result in further hesitation and discrimination in the employment of neurodivergence?
No, that's an interesting one. I would say yes, they are responsible. When you look at the first part of your question, they caused. If you've got issues that were caused by whilst you're in the employ of somebody. Look at some of the other areas that we have got. We've got a workman's compensation policy. We've got policies that you've got to have insurance for. to protect a person if they're physically harmed. There's also laws in place for injury on duty. Look at
Yes,
IOD. So if injury on duty is physical, why not emotional, mental, and psychological?
because
Then
it's a
all
lot
they've got
harder
to
to
do
measure,
is
right?
adjust. Yes. So they've got to adjust the laws and the explanation within it to actually include that. So
Yes.
if I'm now suffering with anxiety, depression, and all sorts of things in terms of mental health, because there's bullying in the workplace, harassment, discrimination, and it's impacting who I am. I'm now a clinical depressant. I need to take days off because my well-being is so difficult that I'm now feeling suicidal. And that needs medication, it needs treatment, it needs psychologists, it needs support, counseling. Your company is responsible for it. And a lot of companies have got that system in place. They do have that. Where the medication comes into question, though, and this is where the gray area comes in, because neurodivergent, understanding neurodivergent compared to mental health, that is where they will argue the point. You cannot cause somebody to become bipolar because it
Yes,
is a function, right?
that's
So
very
it
true.
is a natural brain function. When you look at dyspraxia, ADHD, you can't cause somebody to become ADHD.
And you also can't cure it. So
No.
ultimately, I get completely what you're saying. And I think
Yeah.
it's really important to discuss a lot of these points about this, the red tape. Where exactly does this red tape
Yes.
lie, in the gray areas?
Yeah. Adjust the policy to be clear. But where do we take responsibility? However, and I'm being very specific on this, adjust your policies to say this is what we take responsibility for. If we
Yes.
cause mental health issues, yes, we are fully responsible for the payment of everything else. However, we're never not going to discount the fact that as an employee who is neurodivergent, we will equally support and subsidize your medication.
Yes.
Because you disclose to us, and part of reasonable accommodation, we would feel honored if you'd allow us to support you on that journey and also support your healing journey. And if you cannot afford your medication at any point, please feel free and comfortable to say to us, this is my situation. Because when you look at retention of talent, retention of employees, a lot of companies will increase and give a bonus or double the salary to retain somebody who's talented. Why not pay a little bit extra every month and subsidize the medication so that there's less pressure on the person and you're guaranteed they're getting access to what they need?
And I love
it is a support system.
I love the personal aspect that you bring to this, because I think a lot of people, when we think about business or corporate or, this formal environment, it's like you keep your emotions out of it. You keep whatever's going on personally, you don't bring it with you to work. Like that's kind of the accepted norm. But there is an element of personal connection here and personal responsibility to one another on a respectful basis. I absolutely love that. How does neurodiversity shape your perspective on leadership, and what unique strengths do you believe neurodiverse leaders bring to the table?
It's a beautiful question.
It's a hard one, I know. ChatGPT helped me out big time, man.
It's a beautiful question. And I think because it brings curiosity. It's an unusual way to say it, but curiosity. As a leader who is neurodivergent, you become curious about your environment, which means that because you understand the depth and the pain and how you hurt in some areas, you become more compassionate in the way that you lead people. So neurodivergent leaders are more thoughtful, have more empathy, more compassion, more kindness, more awareness on the way that they speak to somebody. It's their tone and their ability to connect. It's the relationship building. It is the deeper conversations that they have. because they want to know the reality of who you are, and then they become more heightened in their
Yes.
ability to lead you in your specific area of expertise, rather than saying, well, everybody's the same and you should all expect the same and work the same. That's not that's not how it works. Because neurodivergent people have got the ability to think out the box, the creativity with curiosity fast tracks the success of the company. And with the creativity, it means that I'm not limited to this is the only solution available. Neurodivergent
Mm.
people come out with the most incredible, phenomenal, amazing solutions that will it actually breaks down the limited ability to think. It increases the ability for the company to save money, resources. So the
For
creativity
sure.
there is impacting the company. And what they're doing is they're coming out with things that will actually have sustainability in the long term,
Mm.
not a short-term solution. A lot of people will come out with, they'll have a brainstorming session and they'll be like, these are what we can do. Let's
Yes.
invest more money. Let's build this. And let's create this. And a neurodivergent person is
Yes.
thinking out the box and they'll be like, why do we have to spend that money? Why do we
Yes.
have to invest in something else? Okay, have you thought about? Which means that the curiosity and the creativity based on the issue brings different solutions to the table. And that's why
Yes.
neurodivergent leaders are the best people to have in your work environment. They're cutting costs, they're
Yeah.
cutting time wasting, they're cutting complacency, they're cutting laziness,
Right.
and they're cutting stupidity and
That's
long
actually,
things.
yes, that's actually one of the main ways I think I define neurodiversity as compared to, what being a neurotypical, or I don't know. I'm like, again, red tape, hey, red tape, let's tiptoe. Um, oh wait, I lost my train of thought. It was you made such a nice point. What were you saying?
We were talking about our leaders being curious and using curiosity and creativity to actually
Yes.
challenge mindsets and bring amazing solutions to the table.
Yes, yes. When it comes to finding those solutions, I think that particularly neurodivergents are especially skilled at, because our brains are just naturally wired this way. I want to find the
Yes,
shortest, quickest, easiest,
yes.
most convenient solution. And it means they're thinking that way on behalf of your company. So that is so powerful. Your focus on people-centric leadership in industries like IT and manufacturing is so unique. How do you bring empathy and human connection and this personal touch into these often tech-driven, quite mechanical, I only want to hear one click, pardon the pun, industries, right?
I think that it's a very, very different beast at the moment. The
Yes.
IT automation, when technology environment, is actually brilliant for people who are not neurodivergent.
Oh, I love that.
It's the perfect environment for them because
I
it's
wouldn't
more laid
know.
back, more amazing. The thoughtfulness is there. There's a lot more
That's
empathy.
lovely.
With the
Yeah.
IT technology, people are dressed comfortably. They're not looking like corporate because they're
Wow.
concentrating on what they're creating and developing, which
And the
means they're still
quality of what they're producing.
exactly. And because
Mm.
their environment is not overstimulated, you're not
Yes.
sitting in boardrooms and long meetings and things. You're in small teams.
Yeah.
You're amongst people that
You can work at 2 o'clock
understand
in the
each
morning if
other.
it suits you
Yeah,
best.
exactly. And it's an
That's so
adaptable
true.
environment. And
I'd never ever thought of it that way. In all
yeah.
fairness, I wouldn't know. I took maths lit in high school. I don't have a mathematical bone in my body. But now I'm thinking I should have tried harder at school, because maybe I would have found like a bit more friends in my career field then.
I mean, think about it. Look at coding. Look at all of those things.
Yes, it
The
actually makes a
creation of
lot of
games,
sense.
drones. You're looking
Hmm.
automation, software development. That
And
takes a
it's
different thinking, and neurodivergent people are brilliant at it.
hugely, I think there's almost a stereotype that it's completely left-brained, but there's a huge
Mm.
creative aspect to it, right?
Exactly.
Wow,
So
that's so
even
cool.
though we stereotypically said neurodivergent people have an inability to concentrate, or they're all over the place, and we look at it from that point of view, we have not
Deur
given them
mekaar.
something that allows them to concentrate and become stimulated in the area that they want.
Yes,
That's where we've missed out on giving
absolutely.
people giving people the skill or the environment where they will succeed because it's in tune with their brain ability.
Mm. Mm, that's powerful. You're describing the ideal world, and I think you're providing so many solutions here where a lot of businesses are stuck. Yeah, in a day and age where a lot of businesses are stuck trying to be, accommodating, trying to be accessible, trying to be inclusive, and simultaneously not wanting to just release the reins and let people run riot, right? Because there's an element of
Yes,
control there. That's
yes.
powerful. What impact do you see the fourth industrial revolution or the technological revolution having on neurodiverse leaders, particularly in these STEM fields?
Oh, that's another beautiful one. And I think the best way to describe this is a friend of mine, a couple that I know for about 26 years. They developed a they developed an app called Whitby, Women in the Built Environment. But why this is relevant to this conversation is because it's people in the STEM industry. We're talking about engineering, manufacturing, we're talking about automation, mechatronics, IT, computer engineering, all of the big ones, right? But then we're going down to who created this app. And Phil
Yes.
and Shelley Marsh are the creators of this for knowledge resources, and they moved to the UK. Now,
And we'll
this
put
app,
the description for at least the link
mm,
for the app in the description below. Check it out.
that'd be brilliant. But what they did, and why I'm talking about it, is because Philip is bipolar
Wow.
and he's an engineer. Now, what was incredible is that he developed this thing, and it's a multi-million dollar app. But it is meant to guide and support women in the built environment and the STEM industry. And because of his creativity, he thought of every single thing that was an unusual
Yes.
way to interact with people in the STEM industry. What would they need? What guidance, support, knowledge, ability, resources? He connected it to
Wow.
multinational companies, to high levels of government, to organizations and associations, all the way through to partnering with South Africa with the Engineering Society
Yes.
here, EXA. Now, what he's done is he's opened up and created something that anybody can have access to in this environment, regardless of what your skills, abilities, needs, or wants are. He's given people a tool, and he built this alongside his wife,
Wow.
Shane. Now, what did it take? Was a different kind of thinking, and it was because he has got such an unusual creativity. Now,
Yeah.
how many people are building apps around the world?
Yeah.
And we'll talk, and all of us will say, like, you need this app, you need this app. Okay, but then what does it do for me? Does it
Yeah.
stimulate my thinking? Does it improve my knowledge base? Can I interact with it in the way
Why
that
does
I don't
investing my
learn?
time in this bring value?
So if you're neurodivergent and you're interacting with an app that stimulates your thinking but allows you to learn and retain that information,
Yes.
it shows his creativity in developing this in that,
Wow.
because he
That is
took into account
incredible.
everybody else's thinking, right?
That's so true. And I think it's also it comes down to almost a visualization of
Mm.
of breaking down these different steps and creating it, literally creating this in code on an app. That's crazy to me.
Exactly.
Oh wow,
Now,
that's
do you
crazy
see
to
how
me.
technology, automation, IT all fits in with somebody who's neurodivergent? And then we're going back
It's
to creativity and
vital.
curiosity. Then we're looking at the unusual solutions that come to the table that impact the entire world. Because
Yes,
neurodivergent people do not discriminate against other people.
100%. Well,
They're
I
too
think
busy worrying about themselves.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, man. I
Yes.
wouldn't say like we're
Am
necessarily,
I
I'm
offending
sure.
somebody else?
You know,
I'm so
I'm
worried about that.
That's so true. And I'm so convinced, I think, that neurodivergents are sitting there going like, oh my gosh, they're gonna know, no one's gonna know. No, they're gonna know, no one's gonna know. You know, when you're
Yes.
so focused on
So,
you. But look, I'm not saying by any means that all neurodivergents are like liberals and like, you know, from that point of view, I'm sure that for one thing, I know that there are definitely racist neurodivergents out there. I know that for sure. There must be. There has to be, you know?
well, look, that's a different conversation because your brain ability has got nothing to do with the crap that falls out your mouth when you don't like somebody.
Thank you. I love that.
Right?
That accountability is really important. And it's actually another
Yes.
point that I wanted to raise is I think when those lines get blurred, that's when people turn around and say, oh, you see, you're using this as an excuse. This is victimhood. This is no,
Yes.
no, no. And in reality, there is like alongside reasonable accommodations in the workplace, within like communities, within schools, within whatever, there is simultaneously so another side of that coin being our responsibility as neurodivergents to meet them halfway because they are making an
Mm,
accommodation for us. If you
yes.
want me to give me, if I want you to give me 50% more, I need to give you 50% more,
Yes.
you know?
And isn't it that the whole thing about, and this is where we can change the words that we use.
Yes.
So we can create a supportive, safe environment, but how about a collaborative partnership where I have
Yes.
a vested interest in making sure that you succeed, and in the same breath, we work together so that you give me your 100% so that I succeed. And that's the beautiful collaborative partnership. If we use that for neurodivergence in the workplace, then it's no longer, oh, you got issues or
Mm.
you are a nasty person. And here's the other area
It's
is you
part
can
of
have
changing the
some nasty
dialogue.
managers who have got
Ooh.
their own issues that are toxic, that
And end
are,
up being
that
quite
are bullies.
abusive.
And
Yeah.
yes, and so when you look at it from that perspective, you got to also have a person who's neurodivergent, who's been given the
Mm.
skills and the confidence to speak up and say, this person is toxic. And it's
Yes.
got nothing to do with my diagnosis. I'm telling you,
Mm.
this person is toxic to everybody. So
Yes.
you can't actually hold on like a badge of honor that it's because of my diagnosis that I should be on the receiving end of this toxic behavior because maybe I caused it. Stop taking
Absolutely.
responsibility for toxic people.
And separate your diagnosis or your neurodiversity from you as a person and your identity because they're not one
Yes.
and the same. They're
No,
interconnected, but they're not one
exactly.
and the same. Oh,
Mhm.
that's stunning. That is stunning. In your experience, how can compassionate leadership transform corporate cultures, especially for neurodiverse employees? And I think you've somewhat, you know, answered this already. And I love that you addressed, by the way, women in STEM fields, because this is another point I wanted to actually ask you about.
Well, you're going to absolutely love this. I wrote The Value of Compassion. And the value of compassion actually began Transformation Lebanon during a time when they were really at war and they needed to develop themselves. Now, you're talking about disconnect, disharmony, disrespect, pain, horror, all sorts of things in a country where people were feeling like they could not be seen, they weren't heard. And I wrote this value, taking into account during COVID time,
Mm,
the health issues and the mental awareness, suicidal rate, and the depression that came out of it. And so when I wrote this, I
skyrocketed.
wrote and it's something we can give away to your listeners.
Oh, that
The
would be
simplicity
lovely.
of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the value of compassion. The first opening statement is at the level of respect, all people are equal.
Mm, mm,
So when we look at people, regardless of where they come from, all people are equal. And then the other area are, some of the other aspects that I wrote in here is a compassionate person comprehends, connects, understands and accepts people for who they are and where they are at in their journey, then they entice them to grow to the next levels of excellence in their personal and business lives. And they do this by adding value in every way to guide, support, and share expertise and experiences to help that person in a meaningful way. So when you're looking
Wow.
at compassion in the
It's
work environment,
mindful.
exactly that. And be present and hold space for people in those moments when they cannot explain what I'm going through, what's going on. Come without judgment and hold space for them and just be. You don't
Solid
have to know
gold.
everything. Right? I don't have
100%.
to be a specialist on neurodivergence, but if you are having a cuck day, I can sit down with you and make space for you and say to you, would you like me to help you with something? Would you like me to just sit there, be there, or just shut up and just be there? Just sit with the person. Don't even say anything. Just be.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. And I think that message, it's another soundbite that needs to get out there, because it's that comfort with the gray area. It's the comfort within discomfort. And it's understanding the subjective in order to be objective. Don't you think?
Yes, exactly. And then think about energy. Energy plays a massive role. You know, with somebody who's got ADHD or who's bipolar and they're going through one of the moments, right? All you got to do is just bring your beautiful energy into their presence and be that calmness that they need in that moment. There's no judgment. There's no what's going on. Did you take your tablets? Like it's something that, right?
It's just compassionate companionship, if you will.
Yes, exactly. You know, because when you show compassion, you're showing people that you accept them the way they are. And then I'll give you a very different view on this. Empathy is an emotion that you show towards people, their situation, and what they're going through. It's an emotional state, right? So I feel empathy for a person. I feel your pain. I don't know what you're going through, but I feel for you, right?
Yes.
Compassion is a behavior
Yeah.
that you show them. So when you show compassion, you create an action, you create an environment, you sit still with them, you're showing compassion whilst you're feeling empathy.
I love that. And I think what's also quite important with that point is that without necessarily understanding, we can still show compassion before we feel empathy, and action usually entails emotion. That's powerful. You have designed programs addressing diversity, workplace bullying, and youth leadership. How does your personal experience influence the way you create these initiatives?
That's a brilliant one.
Let's go. We're going to get down into it now.
Yeah, right? That's going to be a brilliant one. The reason being is that I was one of the biggest bullies growing up.
Oh, really?
How do you adjust bullying? Is you had to have experienced it or been one of them.
That's very true. I've experienced both, weirdly enough. I've experienced both because I was bullied within an inch of my life in primary school, but I partially created that dynamic with the other kids myself because of my rejection sensitive dysphoria. I'll be dead honest, I was a bitch, hey? I was a bitch. It was deliberate. And it was like, I'm going to reject you before you can reject me. And so I dug my own grave, you know?
Now, look, listen to what you just said. I'll reject you before you reject me, which is a sabotage syndrome, right?
Big time.
It's a self-sabotage system. Yes. So this is what I was saying, is that if you look at the parallels between what you were saying and my journey as well. So growing up, during my teenage years, I had a very traumatic experience. And then what happened to me was I actually went on into a very different way of doing things, protecting myself. And then what I would do was beat people that were hurt.
Hello. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. I don't know how to talk by myself. We're back. Tech issues resolved. And we've made the switch over to mobile, which is going to be very useful for some YouTube shorts. So I'm looking forward to hearing you dropping some bombs here. We're gonna fuck this up. Let's go.
Definitely. Okay, now then it's going to get exciting.
For sure. So let's go back to that question, because you were giving me such a gorgeous answer when you got cut off.
You've designed programs addressing diversity, workplace bullying, and youth leadership. How does your personal experience influence the way that you create these initiatives?
Oh, I was going to say, this was a fantastic question, because
I'm ready.
it took all of my messed up issues to actually drive this, where I'm at now. And one of the things that I found is experience is the key. And when we look at the different areas, we looked at diversity, we looked at leadership, and then the compassionate leader of influence for me. When I was growing up, I actually had a very traumatic experience when I was 13. And that actually caused me to have a mental switch where I used to be very thoughtful, very gentle, very kind. And after that incident, I just became quite aggressive, and I did not have the coping skills or the know-how or the support to actually understand, how to handle this stuff. So I was even diagnosed as clinically depressive.
Wow.
So my coping skill was to beat the shit out of people.
Oh my gosh.
I became a bully, right? Because I was bullied. And after that experience, I actually looked for anybody that was bullying other people. I looked for any injustices, any excuse to trigger me. And I was doing karate at that time, which was even worse, because I didn't use it as a skill to protect myself. I used it as a skill to inflict pain on people. And so what happened was I actually became known as Hell's Angel by the time I was 16 in school.
Ooh,
and I even had the jacket.
Live with a Hell's Angel right here.
and the thing though is that I embraced it like it was so exciting for me. I took it like it was an award and a recognition as a Hell's Angel. I didn't realize the hell part that I was creating for people.
Wow.
And so one day, I have no idea what happened, but something triggered a thought in me, and I started to question, why am I doing this? Because I had this question going to my, why am I beating up people? Right? I understand that they were bullying everybody else, but then I realized that I was hurting them because they were hurting other people.
It's a sense of control in that situation, right?
Yes. And with that introspection, I came to a realization that I did not have any compassion whatsoever.
But I think that from what I can hear, that carried through to the way that you treated yourself as well.
Yes.
And how you allowed yourself to feel pain and vulnerability. And wow, that's incredibly powerful. And I love that inspired you to really speak up and to fight against injustice, and that became like your purpose and your calling.
Exactly. But when I realized that I lacked compassion, I then had this thought that I can realign injustice by investing and finding out more about compassion and how I can become more compassionate, and then take on those conversations in a different way. So I didn't have to hurt people anymore.
You were essentially able to walk yourself through this healing process, and that's amazing to me, because there are few people, shall I say, who can boast a skill like that, particularly in a context where you're coming from your childhood experiences. You only know what you know. you know,
Yes.
ultimately. And I think for a child to go through something traumatic to the degree that it alters one's personality almost, in a sense, as a cognitive distortion or a coping mechanism, if you will. It's amazing that you were able to power through that and to recognize it for what it was. I mean, kudos to you. Wow. I love that. What advice would you give to neurodiverse individuals aspiring to leadership roles, especially in traditionally rigid industries? And I know it says like engineering and manufacturing, but let's just go with manufacturing for now, because we've established that engineering is in fact not as rigid as we thought.
Well, neither is manufacturing, actually, which is now another area which is brilliant. So I'm sitting on the board of SAMC and MISA, which is manufacturing, engineering, automation, mechatronics, all of those spheres of influence.
Wow.
What I'm finding is that in the manufacturing industry, people are looking for innovative ways to address poverty, to address all of the issues from the United Nations SDGs. So when you look at empowerment, you look at education, you look at youth and women development, you look at partnering collaborations, you're looking at food for Africa kind of environment.
Wow.
What I noticed is that, and I had the most vibrant conversation yesterday with a couple of people, and what we were looking at is how can the manufacturing industry partner with agriculture? Where do people fit in? And I actually said, have you thought of it from a different point of view? Using the land to create an environment for people with mental abilities and mental health issues, to use nature to heal. So over and above just your horses and all of the, having the surrounding areas of being able to meditate, there's something that came up that was a Zen garden.
Wow.
And people were asking, how is that related to manufacturing though? You see, on this farm, or this vision that I have for this farm of mine, there's buildings that are specifically created and developed for the upliftment of a person on every level. So the experiential, the comforting, the calming, the gentle aspects, and then you've got AI, you've got technology, and then you've got anything that allows a person to engage with their brilliance, to uplift their talent, and allow them to grow. And so where manufacturing and IT and automation comes into place, when you are neurodivergent, you're going to come up with the most innovative way of how to use technology to enhance the experience.
For sure.
So that's where it fits.
I think that so many of these fields that you work in are the practical application of how we make these changes happen, you know, and it's recognizing that they have the power to bridge that disconnect, I think.
Exactly.
Wow.
And I think maybe take away the big words, the manufacturing industry, IT, automation, take away the big words and just look at, what do you want in your life? What is your vision? Who do you want to impact? And there's a simple thing that I would leave people with to think and resonate into. You know, we're always looking for our purpose. And it's like there's something so huge and so intriguing that we've got to go on a course.
It's
and
got
then
to
we've
be
got
this
to go
long, like Hobbit
stuff.
journey written by Tolkien.
Right? And you go, and while you're drawing, you know, all of your brain's going to kick in and suddenly you're going to find your purpose. And I'm like, no. Has it occurred to you that as you are doing things on a daily basis, you are being on purpose just by being kind, by understanding people, by holding space for someone, your ability to communicate,
by being deliberate, right?
Intentional, exactly. And so I talk about living a legacy versus leaving a legacy. And if you are living your legacy, you are on purpose every single day, which means that I am being purposeful in my actions, but then I feel purposeful in how I feel. So aren't you always on purpose then? From the time that you wake up with intention, you choose how your day will be, regardless of whether you took your medication or not, whether you have a skill or a tool or an ability or a talent. You're being intentional. I'd love to upgrade something. I'd love to learn something. I'd love to help somebody. Then you're being intentional in your behavior. You're
And it's
being on
incredibly
purpose.
aligning. It really is.
Yes.
Looking forward, what changes do you hope to see in leadership as neurodiversity becomes more recognized and embraced in the workplace?
I think more thoughtfulness. More thoughtfulness in understanding the journey of a person without dumbing them down to the limited understanding we come from.
Yes.
And then when you look at somebody who's neurodivergent looking to be in leadership, it's to know your worth and that you're not limited because you are brilliant because.
Yes. I love
right?
that. I love that.
So I think let go of the facade. It's the bravest thing you can do. Allow people to support you because you deserve it.
One of the most interesting experiences for me in creating this podcast has been in my decision to consciously unmask while I'm recording my episodes, which is why at times I look dazed and I'm coming as I am and there's no makeup and because, you know, ultimately we have to be brave enough to take off the mask before we can expect other people to understand what's underneath.
Exactly.
Wow, how
Bring
powerful.
your true self. Bring your true self.
How can people reach you? How can people reach out to you? How can they contact you? How can they find out more about what you do?
Well, our websites are www.kileadership.com. It actually means ki. It's Japanese for energy. And the other company is Chi, which is Chinese for energy.
Yes.
So celebratinghumanityinternational.com for the diversity side, where we talk into neurodiversity, neuroinclusion, and all the things that companies need. That's the celebratinghumanityinternational.com site. And then keyleadershipinstitute.com.
Ah, fabulous. Yes. So we're going to put those links below, and we will put the link for the special little value pack that Artie is leaving for the listeners today. Absolutely. We'll leave that link in the description below as well. Artie, thank you so much for your patience through all the tech difficulties and for being your raw, real, truest self. I cannot thank you enough for all the value that you brought. Really absolute solid gold. To everyone else, thank you for tuning in and listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much.